Put it on. It's cool down now, right?
All right, call the meeting to order. Those that care to, please stand for an opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Mr. Cameron, will you lead us in prayer, please?
Let's pray. Our Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for this nation and the opportunity that we have, Lord, to exercise our right to vote. Pray for this country, for the leadership, and for what we do in this chamber tonight. Lord, I pray that you would guide and direct us with the decisions we make on behalf of this community. Guide and direct in all we do. In Jesus' name.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm not going to sit down. I'm going to hit the red button to make it go live. The mic is on, and I have a proclamation. If you are a veteran of our armed forces, would you please join me up front? Now, I know that's Mr. Franklin, Mr. Updike. Don't try to get out of it. Mr. Wilson, come on down. Do we have anybody in the audience? No one's going to stand up. All right, that's fair. Sorry, Ryan, I should have given you a heads up. I know. I kind of make it up as I go along. All right, this is a proclamation, Veterans Day. Whereas Veterans Day has its origins in the November 11th, 1918 armistice, which brought World War I to a conclusion, and whereas the Allied victory of World War I affirmed the strength of great nations acting together for high purposes, and whereas the people of the United States caused, through their elected representatives, the designation of November 11th as a federal legal holiday, which in 1954 became officially known thereafter as Veterans Day, and whereas Veterans Day continues to be celebrated and commemorated with solemn observance in honor of all Americans who have served their country in times of war and conflict, and whereas Veterans Day has become a significant part of American heritage as we recognize the millions of our citizens whose military service has had a profound effect on history, and whereas the courage, honor, sacrifice, and dedication which veterans of the United States Armed Forces have displayed in the cause of justice, freedom, and democracy are most worthy of recognition. Now, therefore, I, Matt Russell, Mayor of the City of Republic, Missouri, do hereby call upon all citizens to commend Americans veterans and observe Friday, November 11th, 2022 as Veterans Day. And with that, I want to thank you for your service. Sir, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to do that. Moving on to citizen participation. I'd like to open it up for citizen participation of anybody wishing to speak to something not on the agenda. Is there anyone here wishing to do that? Seeing none, I will close citizen participation and move on to the consent agenda. I welcome the council to ask any questions or comment about items number 2 through 4 on the agenda. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Moving on to boards, commissions, and committees schedule. We have a city council meeting next week on November 15th, 2022, a board of adjustments meeting on December 1st, 2022, a planning and zoning meeting December 5th, and a city council meeting again on December 13th. Is that going to be our only one?
Correct, December 6th.
December 6th. All right. Is December 6th going to be our only one?
It is, but we also have a workshop on the 8th that we've invited the council to as well.
Excellent.
Yes.
Moving on to old business and table items. This is number 5 on our agenda. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 22-59 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of the Frisco Square Phase 4 subdivision.
Thank you, ma'am. Any updates from the city? No. Couldn't find you there for a second. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 22-59.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will now do a roll call voice vote.
Councilmember Gerlich.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Updike.
Aye.
Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Self.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Poole.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 8-0. Moving on to item number 6 on our agenda. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 22-60 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of the Valley Trail Phase 2 subdivision.
Thank you, ma'am. Any updates from the city? Any questions or discussion from council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 22-60.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Poole. Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerlich.
Aye.
Councilmember Updike.
Aye.
Councilmember Self.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke.
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinance passes 8-0. Moving on to item number 7 on our agenda. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 22-61 by title only, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council reaffirming the gross receipts tax to be imposed upon electric corporations conducting applicable business within the city.
Thank you. Any updates from the city? No. Thank you, ma'am. Any questions or discussion from council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 22-61.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Updike.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerlich.
Aye.
Councilmember Self.
Aye.
Councilmember Poole.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0. Moving on to new business, specifically we have a public hearing. I would like to open up the public hearing on regarding appropriating from the revenue of the City of Republic, Missouri, expenditures in accordance with the fiscal year 2023 budget of the City of Republic, Missouri, and providing for adjustments thereto. I would like to open up this public hearing to citizens wishing to speak. Are there any citizens wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public meeting. Move on to item number 9 on our agenda. This is the first reading of Bill 22-62 by title only. I would entertain a motion and a second for that.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council appropriating from the revenue of the City of Republic, Missouri, expenditures in accordance with the fiscal year 2023 budget of the City of Republic, Missouri, and providing for adjustments thereto.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week.
No worries. Hope you're better.
I am feeling better.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Jared Keeling, Assistant City Administrator. I'll provide more of a broad overview tonight. As you recall, a week ago today, we had a little bit more of a work session that went into broader, more detail. So just want to start with the calendar. We had the workshop last Tuesday. Tonight will be the first read, and then 1 week from now, actually, will be the second read. If you have any questions, obviously, regarding the budget, either reach out to myself or the respective department heads. We'll be happy to answer those before next week. So we anticipate revenues for the 2023 budget to be just north of $37.1 million. We're bringing in from reserves. A large portion of those reserves are for the wastewater treatment plant improvements. As you recall, we borrowed the money in March, I believe, of this year. Time gets by fast. March this year. But bringing in about $22 million to cover the cost of the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, and we're budgeting expenditures this year for 2023 of just over $63 million. Again, a large portion of that is expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. I want to cover briefly the funds that we have, the departments that we have, and what goes into the budget. So the biggest fund we have is the general fund. That's because a lot of stuff goes into the general fund. We have a 1 cent sales tax to support the general fund in addition to some other revenues. What makes up the general fund is administration, and by administration, there's several components underneath administration: city administration office, city clerk office, BIO office, IT, finance, just to name a few. Also under the general fund is public safety. That would be police department, fire department. The bills administration department. Bills has many functions, but the administration division is under the general fund. Municipal court, and finally animal control. We have the Parks and Recreation Fund. The fund is pretty much derived of all of its own funding, whether it be sales tax or program fees, rental fees, etc. We have the Bills Department, Public Works Division, Street Department, and the enterprise funds, water and wastewater. And finally, we have the specialty funds, which are almost always have a dedicated source of revenue, most of them being sales tax. That's the Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund, the Fire Sales Tax Fund, Grant Fund, a retired Stormwater Fund that we will officially retire in 2023, and finally a debt fund. So taking these one at a time, and I will go fairly quickly, and if you just happen to have any questions, please let me know. So going general fund first, and under the administration part of the general fund, budgeted revenues for 2023 are just shy of $9 million. The bulk of that, the lion's share of it, approximately 50% of that, will come from the 1 cent general fund sales tax. As I reported last Tuesday, another good year this year, sales tax revenue. We anticipate at the end of 2022, our increase over 2021 will be somewhere in the neighborhood between 16 and 18%. So that's an incredible gain. We're happy to have it, incredible amount of favor to have it, and blessed to have it. We are budgeting for 2023 a modest 3% increase over 2022. That has been our practice here for as long as I've been here, as long as I can remember. We try to budget modestly and hope that, quite frankly, that we'll see better than 3%, and we have seen that over the past 3 or 4 years, and hope, but I'd like nothing more for that to continue. Some other highlights on the revenue are property taxes, franchise fees, the admin transfer, which I went into length about what that's all about, but it's basically all the departments pay their proportionate share to pay for some functions such as IT, administration, human resources, finance, etc. It's our way, the department's ways of paying back the general fund or the administration portion for covering those duties that we quite frankly can't do. Pay the bills, do HR, do administration, bring in additional revenue through economic development. Finally, the one on the utility billing. Utility billing is paid out of the general fund, and a direct dollar for transfer comes over from the enterprise funds from water and wastewater to cover that expense. Major expenditures in the general fund administration are, of course, personnel. You'll see that throughout every fund. The largest portion of our expenditures are in personnel. Relatively little capital in this fund other than computer replacement and network hardware. For public safety, starting with the police department, 2023 will mark the first full year of the public safety sales tax revenues. As you recall, it went into we voted on it in August of 2021. We started seeing some funds trickle in February, March of this year, but 2023 will be the first full year of the revenues. We anticipate the revenue from that sales tax to total just north of $3.2 million. As per when we went out for the information for the ballot, it's split equally between the fire and police departments. That sales tax has been a blessing. Once again, thankful to Republic citizens for passing it. It has solved a lot of issues and problems and retention and recruitment for our police department and fire department. So thankful to have it. The police department also has a proportionate share of a Greene County sales tax. It's called the Greene County Law Enforcement Sales Tax. We are projecting a 7.3% increase in that tax over 2022. Doesn't quite equal the gains we've been seeing in our city, but we're also thankful for those gains. And as part of the ballot initiative in 2021 for the public safety sales tax, we agreed forever we would freeze the current amount which we had in 2021 to support those departments, fire and police. And we did decide earlier this year to increase those amounts every year by the amount of COLA given to the employees. So you'll see a transfer coming over from the general fund to the police department of approximately $1.3 million. Once again, personnel there, added personnel as on the next slide. I just wanted to provide this update, and you'll see it for fire too. As a result of public safety sales tax, we said we would bring on 12 new additional staff members in the police department. We're halfway there, and tremendously proud of that. Fire, I know we've got a few more to hire, but have you already got 6? Is that correct? 5. Okay, so we got 1 more to get before the end of the year. That means we'll have 6 more to get as promised to the voters. We're going to get those. It's just a matter of when we can afford them and what the appropriate time is. We will take a look at the budget come March, April, May to see if we can perhaps afford more in 2023. But we're incredibly proud to have 6 on staff already. And then, of course, the pay portion of that, the added retirement benefit, the increase in pay, the public safety sales tax has allowed us to do that for the police department. As for the fire department, again, they get half of the new sales tax, $3.2 million divided by 2 is about $1.6 million. They have a small cigarette sales tax that generates about $30,000 a year, and similar to the police department, they have that frozen amount that we agreed to in 2021. Personnel, again, making up the majority of their expenditures. And then you'll see the capital improvements. I missed one on the police side. They had an evidence drying cabinet for about $17,000. Again, rather a small expense. And then on the police side, consulting services for future Station 3, location and early architectural services. As for the fire department and public safety sales tax, I'm incredibly proud of this. We'll have 8 on board of the promised 14. I think by January. We've still got some battalion chiefs to hire. I know Dwayne and Lynn are hoping to have those on board by January of 2023. But 8 of the 14 is a good start. We got 6 more to hire, and we'll hopefully have those. I think we might be able to have those all on board by the end of 2024. Builds admin falls under the general fund. This is all the administration portion of the Builds Department, economic development. This is really part of the engine that drives this city. So incredibly proud of this department in general. Where Andrew has taken in the past, and Karen and Garrett now. But fund revenues totaling $468,000. Fund expenditures totaling approximately $1.2 million. You'll see it spread across all their funds, whether it be the admin portion or the public works portion. They have split a cost for the new furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the new building. That new building, which was shown on the first slide, is hopefully going to come on board and available to our employees and around April of next year. But you have to equip that. You have to get furniture. You have to get fixtures. You have to get equipment. And their anticipated cost of that's about $500,000. This is the admin portions, the proportional share of that expense. Municipal court, still part of the general fund. Megan, our judge, has done a great job here. I covered that during the workshop, but we've narrowed the gap between revenues and expenditures, and I'm sure that's thankful to our better processes there. There is increased activity. Anytime you get more people, bigger population, more police, you're going to have increased activity. But pleased where that fund has been, and pleased where that fund continues to go in the positive direction as far as shrinking that deficit. Animal control, I hinted at this at the meeting last Tuesday, but it's incredible the amount of volume we're going through over there. If you see those numbers, our numbers this year, YTD numbers this year compared to 2021, I mean, I personally had no idea we had 320 dogs go through there and 330 cats. And if you look at those numbers compared to 2021, that is a significant spike. So I think that just speaks to Christina and all of her efforts over there, volunteer efforts that we get from the community. I know Amazon is a huge donor of stuff over there, so we have a lot going on over there. But that new building that we brought on board in 2018, it's meant a lot. I think it's 18. Does that sound about right? 19. It has meant a lot to this community, meant a lot to Christina and the animal control function altogether. So tremendously proud of that. So moving on to the special different funds, Parks and Recreation Fund, self-sufficient fund, mainly in part by 3 sales taxes that we're so incredibly fortunate to have. We have 2 locals that we got renewed in August of this year, 25-year extensions. And then we have a shared portion, again, like the police department, of a county park sales tax, which that originally came in 2001. That has no sunset for the county portion of that. So we get a shared portion of that tax based on our population. We are seeking to get a larger portion of that sales tax based on our population. We just haven't quite got that done yet, but based on the 2020 census data, we should be realizing another roughly $100,000 portion of that tax. So revenues for our department being Parks and Rec, just shy of $5 million, and we try to present a balanced budget each and every year so our expenditures match that revenue. You will see some capital improvements in here. I think we've indicated and shared some information on those previously, but as the first domino in making the community event space at J.R. Martin Park, we have to get those tennis courts moved. We want to create an outdoor restrooms at Miller Park, so the tennis courts will be moving over to Miller Park. We're going to create an outdoor restroom, and that is $328K. That $500K on there is our last land payment on the Sawyer property that we purchased, my date's confused, but some 2 years ago. So that'll be our last payment on that. So that was a $3.2 million purchase, and happy to have that paid off in December of next year. So moving on to Public Works, Street Department. This is probably all of these actually have a tremendous amount of activity going on. But on to the Street Department, and I know we've talked about this in prior meetings. We have, thanks to the public safety sales tax, we have been able to get in its entirety 100% of the state motor fuel and the state motor sales tax back to the street department. If you'll recall, 2 years ago, 100% of that was in the police department. And that was the reason, quite frankly, we couldn't overlay our streets and we couldn't do street improvements. But now we've got that money back over there. It started this year. Some $1.2 million, I believe, worth of improvements in our streets. And as you'll see in 2023, we're once again budgeting $1.1 million in street overlays improvements. And that's mostly thanks to getting that state motor fuel and state motor sales tax back over there, which is thanks to the public safety sales tax. So budgeted expenditures are around $4.6 million, street overlay, the furnishings for the new building that I spoke about before. And Garrett, I get a little bit lost on this, but you've got a joint expenditures of multiple vehicles. Water Fund, the revenues represent the new rates, which you voted on a couple of weeks ago. Those go into effect January 1. As for the expenditures, again, salaries make up a large portion of the expenditures. The major capital improvements are the Hankins water line, furnishings for the new buildings, and that proportional share of the vehicles that Garrett spoke to a minute ago. Wastewater, once again, the revenues represent the new rates that go into effect January 1. Major capital improvements here is the big boy, $20 million or more for the wastewater treatment plant expansions and improvements, $750,000 for Hankins completion, $300,000 for furnishings for the new buildings, and then a larger portion of that vehicle expense. On to the specialty funds, stormwater fund. This was the fund that the capital improvement sales tax turned into. So this fund actually went away in 2017. However, we were left with, I can't exactly remember, about a $2 million cash balance. We've been spending that down over the years, but we anticipate in 2023 we will dissolve the fund just because there will be no longer be any funds left. There's about $600,000 right now in the fund. Our major capital improvement projects for 2023 are going to be the Morris Park stormwater improvements. If you'll recall, that's the new 5-acre parcel off of 174 over there behind the Pentecostal church and what will now be Liberty. So that whole entire area needs some assistance with stormwater, and the plan is to spend about $400,000 improving that, and then a miscellaneous $135K for some miscellaneous stormwater improvements. The grant funds, we're still expending our ARPA dollars. We got right at $2.7 million from ARPA. I think we'll get to the finish line in 2023 for expending those funds on what this council ultimately decided to spend them on. As you can see, some of the highlights there are J.R. Martin Park project, ADA, Brookline Lift Station, and IT upgrades. Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund, passed by the voters in August of 2017. Tremendously proud of what this fund has accomplished already. Just a few things are the Animal Control Center, the Gateway sign, fleet vehicles for the police department each and every year, storm sirens. This particular fund has allowed us to improve the city in many different ways. So really proud of what we've been able to accomplish so far. Our major projects for next year, and really there's one big one that I know everyone will probably be excited about, especially those in Public Works, is the intersection improvements at Lynn and Hines, the proposed roundabout to bring that about in the construction in the summer of 2023 to the tune of about $1.2 million. It has been historically, and I don't know if it still is, but one of the most dangerous intersections in our city. So we're tremendously happy to bring about improvements to that intersection. Fire sales tax. This tax was passed in 2013 for 15-year sunset. I know Joanne and Lynn have done a tremendous amount with this, particularly in purchasing of trucks mainly. And now there has been some miscellaneous equipment purchased, but mainly it's been in trucks. In 2023, they're budgeting for a $350,000 water tender and some miscellaneous equipment. And with that, Mayor, that is a quick overview, but I wanted to make sure to give you the opportunity to answer any questions, and I'll be available, obviously, the whole but next 7 days before the second read. So,
Do we have any questions for him tonight? Seeing none, thank you very much.
thank you, sir.
All right. Moving on to other business, specifically resolutions. This is item number 10 on our agenda. This is 22-R-69, a resolution of the City Council authorizing application for assistance through the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant program of the Department of Natural Resources for an outdoor classroom to be included in Phase 2 of the J.R. Martin Park Development Project. I need a motion and a second to take up Resolution 22-R-69, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Good evening.
Joanna Scott, Recreation Specialist with the Parks and Recreation Department. The Parks and Recreation Department is seeking council support to move forward with a grant application for a Land and Water Conservation Fund through the Department of Natural Resources. The funds, if awarded, would be used towards features in Phase 2 of the J.R. Martin Park project, which would include an outdoor classroom, additional trail, as well as universally inclusive playground features. The Parks Department, as a whole, we're just grateful for the support shown by the community with the renewal of the capital improvement sales tax. And it's very important to us that we are good stewards of those funds generated through that sales tax. The Land and Water Conservation Fund grant would allow us to leverage the funds that are generated for a 50-50 matching opportunity. We're looking at a total project cost of $600,000 for those 3 features. That would be a $300,000 requested grant funding, as well as a $300,000 match commitment to be budgeted in the 2024 and 2025 budgets through the 2017 city and the 2022 Parks Capital Improvement Sales Tax. Staff recommends approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Franklin.
Just as a refresher, what was Phase 1 of this project?
So Phase 1 includes, if you look at the picture on the screen, there is a plaza section at that central, and so that plaza section is in Phase 1, as well as an open air pavilion to be used for farmer markets, special events, other community events, and then the renovations of the parking lot and drive through there to be used both for parking as well as space for food trucks at events and ingress and egress for the school district.
So then the removal of the tennis courts, that would be a part of Phase 1.
Correct, yes.
Joanna, could you tell me more about this outdoor classroom?
Yes, we do have a couple images. So we're incredibly excited about the opportunity for an outdoor classroom, especially with our park situated in the center of several schools. So we're looking at a space that will have some storage for supplies out there, and then open air seating where you can sit out in the park under our pavilion with your shade and enjoy different programming. We look at using it for community programming. We have several art programs that could be placed here, as well as allowing the school district to use during hours, and then rental availability for community groups as well.
Anything else? Yes, sir. Thanks.
Drove the ship on this grant. It's been tremendous. But I do want to add, and I want to thank the Republic School District. They pledged $40,000 for this project, and we've already billed them for some miscellaneous $15,000. But they've agreed essentially to be a partner in this grant. So we will be utilizing $25,000 of their funds as well. That will work very well on our behalf when it comes for potential selection of the grant. So I just want to thank them publicly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Updike, did I see a question?
He answered it for me.
He answered. Great. Well, as this is a resolution, we can call it immediately for a vote, which is what I will do. All those in favor of 22-R-69, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution 22-R-69 passes. Moving on to item number 11 on our agenda. This is 22-R-70, a resolution of the City Council to review, amend, and approve the 5-year capital program for 2023 through 2027. I need a motion and a second to take up Resolution 22-R-70, please.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. You're back.
Thanks, sir. Our charter calls for the city administrator to issue a 5-year capital improvement plan each and every year as part of the budget cycle. So this is our capital improvement plan for 2023 through 2027. I do want to say this plan acts as a guide. We change it each and every year based on revenues and based on what becomes a priority. But each of the department heads were responsible for submitting their 5-year capital improvements plan, and you'll see that before you. I don't want to go into the details of it. Happy to entertain any questions, but I want to make sure there is something missing in this document that I noticed earlier, and I will have an amended version to you by next meeting. We failed to get the capital improvement sales tax fund in here, and that's a very important part of this, so we will have that in by the next meeting. But questions in regards to the specific projects can be directed to department heads if you have any tonight, or if you had any in the next week, I'll be happy to answer those. So.
Questions from council on this issue?
And I just had a general question.
Yes, sir.
What is the Bailey Avenue extension?
I can answer it because I got a microphone. So, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
so the Bailey Avenue extension goes from the back of Lakes at Schuler Ridge, that section that goes down through, it would actually end up through Kirk's Collision. So there's his driveway. There is a thoroughfare plan that calls for us to have another point of access that moves north and south through the community. In Bailey Avenue, as you go through, I believe it stops short at the park that we have right there. And I'm sorry, what is that subdivision? It's not in the city. Rankin Acres, it goes through that area. So eventually, I don't want to say to the folks at Rankin Acres, we're going right through your property, but the way that layout is it's meant to go all the way from Schuler Ridge all the way out to US 60. And so what I will say to this, back to that Bailey Avenue, probably 5 years ago, I just sit there and said, this is 10 years down the road, but now all of a sudden with all the development that's taken place, people are dedicating right away, and we're starting to see that actually possibly have more light and come to fruition much faster.
Any other questions on this issue? Seeing none, as this is a resolution, we can call it immediately for a vote. All those in favor of 22-R-70, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution carries 8-0.
Thanks, sir.
Moving on to item number 12 on our agenda. This is 22-R-71, a resolution of the City Council authorizing execution of a Phase 2 contract price amendment with Burns & McDonnell Engineering Co., Inc. for a capital improvement project number 3, CIP number 3. I need a motion and a second to take up 22-R-71.
Motion.
Motion and a second. Good evening.
Good evening. Karen Haynes, Builds Administrator. Amendment 1 is Phase 2 of the design build contract with Burns & McDonnell for phased improvements for linear sewer upgrades and an upgraded lift station number 4. So the map in front of you, the green lines indicate the force mains that'll be upgraded during this project, and then the red square is actually an indicated location of the current lift station, which will be upgraded in place for this project. So the target price originally for the first phase of this contract was $2.5 million. We've come back with a design build construction price or contract sum of $2.4 million. With a completion date 430 days from the execution of the actual contract. The contract also does include a couple of additional provisions. Those are for unforeseen circumstances, which may add on to the total price of the contract. It does include some railroad coordination, and we're unsure of what that total amount will be thus far, and an additional sum for replacing seeding and sodding in the lawns infected by this project. This project potentially will begin in the spring and go until the following spring. We are recommending approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council?
Karen, just out of curiosity, is this a big project that will affect a lot of the residents?
It is definitely a big project, and this is the first of many wastewater improvement projects that we're getting ready to embark on. This particular project, it will be impactful to this particular neighborhood, but as far as like the scale of the number of homes, this is the smaller of several CIP projects.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
So in relationship to the communication regarding the projects on all the sewer projects, when we met in Kansas City with Burns and McDonald last month, one of the things that we discussed was the communication plan and will they have project managers on site to coordinate with the residents ahead of schedule. So the good news is it starts in spring, but the communication plan to actually communicate, have a person that they can contact should they have a problem in the development, or say the seating and the sodding doesn't take place. It's kind of like the contractor just leave town and leave the resident with a problem. So there is some customer care and communication that goes along with the project that we've discussed with the engineers. So they'll have project managers and inspectors along with our own on site to represent the community to make sure any citizen does not have any, or when they do, there'll be service interruptions, there'll be challenges. Done enough of these where it's not just the boring contractors that hit things too. Water lines get hit, service lines get hit, even when we're doing the project. So we will have a service plan in place and a communication plan to work with the community, though. It's a great question.
Is this main underneath the road or is this off into the yard?
There's actually both, and it does
Both.
also cross the railroad. So there are certain challenges with this particular project.
I like how you said challenges.
We have a very good plan in place. The next actual resolution, we'll talk a little bit more about the smoke testing project that we're embarking on. We're trying the communication strategy of how we get this information out to the public and notify impacted property owners. So that'll be our first array into our communication with our community. And we'll do the same on this project.
Any other questions for this resolution? Seeing none, and as it is a resolution, we can call it immediately for a vote. All those in favor of 22-R-71, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution passes 8-0. Moving on to item number 13 on our agenda, this is 22-R-72, a resolution of the City Council authorizing execution of an agreement with Burns and McDonald Engineering Co., Inc. for sanitary smoke testing services associated with the wastewater treatment plant project. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 22-R-72.
Motion.
Got a motion and a second. Good evening.
Good evening. Garrett Brickner, Assistant Builds Administrator. So smoke testing is the industry standard method for identifying inflow and infiltration, I&I, which we budget for every year, caused by faults in the system or illicit connections. These can either be cracked or broken pipes or downspouts, sump pumps, or other illicit connections connected to the system. The more water that gets into the sanitary system, the more we have to pump and the more we have to deal with at the treatment plant. Therefore, this effort will identify where the excess water is getting into the system and allow for us to formulate a plan to stop it. Smoke testing involves a crew blowing non-toxic smoke into the sewer system through a manhole. It will then exit the system via roof vents, faults, and illicit connections, showing us where the issues are. Burns McDonald and Republic staff will be in the field collecting data and answering questions that people may have as we go through the neighborhood. So while we're smoke testing, smoke may be evident from roof vents. That means that everything's working properly. If it's going through a house's roof vent, everything's sealed properly, and it's working. Smoke may also be, you may see it coming from manholes, ground surface, sump pumps, yards, roof downspouts, or broken sewer lines. Pending approval tonight, we plan to begin the smoke testing tomorrow morning around 10:30 a.m. In preparation of this, postcards were mailed out to all the property owners in the affected areas, letting them know what we plan to do. The first area will be the area kind of in green there near Main Street, and south of US 60. So those affected roads will be West Miller Road, West Charles Street, Southwest Avenue, South Main Street, South Landon Avenue, South Ryland, and West Nichols Street. So that'll start tomorrow around 10:30. And like I said, we're going to have tons of people out walking the streets as this takes place. So if anybody has any questions, they can come out and talk to us. But typically, once we get going with this, our normal operation hours will be 7 to 7:30 in the morning to about 4 p.m. at night, just kind of depending on how long it takes us to get going every morning. We will not smoke test on weekends or holidays, so nothing this Friday and nothing the week of Thanksgiving. So we're just going to take that whole week and kind of regroup, let everybody kind of settle. This effort is expected to take approximately 3 weeks. However, this effort is weather dependent. So if it rains, we can't test during rain. And if we get a big rain, we probably won't be able to test for a couple days after as that inflow and infiltration works its way through the system. We will be putting out daily updates on our social media pages and website, providing updates and letting people know what areas we will be in the next day. There is the possibility that smoke can get into homes via improper seals, sump pump connections, and others. The smoke is non-toxic and non-staining, but has a slight sulfur odor. While the smoke is non-toxic, extended periods of exposure should be avoided. If a resident has smoke in their house, we are asking them to let someone on the street know. We're not going to enter a residence unless they say, hey, can you take a look at this? And the smoke will dissipate in about 30 minutes or less. So if any of you get calls from citizens, we're asking that you direct those to the Builds Department, and our number is 732-3150. All of our staff has gone through this. They know how to answer those questions, and if citizens are upset, they can get to Karen or myself via that number too. So we're also going to have people walking the streets with us. We're going to have several Builds associates. There's going to be multiple Burns McDonald people. Fire and police department people will also be out there with us. So if anybody has any questions, we will be on the street. They're absolutely welcome to come talk to us as we're doing this process. So the maximum not to exceed for this project is $90,000 and will be paid for out of the I&I reduction line in the 2022 budget, which has the capacity for this expense. So the identification of I&I into the sanitary sewer system could potentially free up capacity and reduce the cost for wastewater treatment of sewer. The data collected during smoke testing will be utilized for the final design of the wastewater treatment plant, CIP projects, and assist in the preliminary planning for addressing areas of I&I throughout the sanitary sewer system. Burns & McDonnell will be able to analyze the data collected, to provide recommendations for immediate implementation into the preliminary and final designs of multiple wastewater projects, including addressing our commitment to address compliance with DNR as part of our abatement order on consent. So we do expect to have an increase in calls and potentially upset customers, but our goal for this project is to be as minimally impactful to the citizens of Republic as possible while collecting accurate, usable data on the status of inflow and infiltration into the wastewater system. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, on the smoke, is it going to have a color to it?
It'll be white to grayish colored. But yeah, so people sometimes mistake it for fire, but on the street. So if somebody runs out, we'll be there saying, yeah, no, it's us.
So if we approve this tonight, you're starting tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir.
Is that enough lead time to warn people about this issue?
Yeah, so in preparation for this, we sent out postcards about a week and a half ago, and we know they've reached people because we have been getting calls, just people asking questions, what's going on. The postcards did include if anybody has any respiratory conditions to let us know, and we'll coordinate with them as we do the smoke testing in their neighborhood.
Yes.
You mentioned what you're going to do with the collective data, right? This company that's doing this, that you guys are going to apply that to wastewater projects in the future.
Yeah.
What about on an individual basis, though? Say somebody does have an illicit connection. Is that something that's also going to be addressed?
Potentially. It's really going to depend on what side it is on. The majority of the issues we find, if it's mostly on the public side, we can deal with that ourselves. If it's mostly on the private side, that's something else we'll have to evaluate on how we move forward with it. But we're just collecting the data at this time so we can make a decision.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you hopeful for the outcome, or what are you thinking?
This is definitely an area that we, the data that we already have shows there is a lot of inflow and infiltration, especially in the green, blue, and yellow areas and the orange area. And then the purple and red areas get a lot from, there's a lot that shows up the lift stations from those areas. So we're trying to identify where exactly that is. We know it exists, so just finding where it is. Best case scenario is we find a really big hole in a pipe and we can patch it. It's easy, takes out a bunch of INI, and we can move on. So yeah, I mean, just having the knowledge is part of the battle.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I know that our police department and our fire department are aware, and there's more and more people working from home and are at home at the time. Have we notified Greene County, like, because 911 goes to Greene County before it comes to us?
Yeah, we've worked with the fire department, and they've let the Greene County dispatch know that we're going to be doing this, and we'll have fire personnel with us. So if they get a call saying, hey, we got a house fire reported here, they can radio their infield personnel and confirm whether it's us doing it or if they actually do need to respond.
And you've been in contact with, like, Spire? I can just see people calling gas company or whatever with the smell and stuff too. So
yeah,
it's all been.
Yeah, we'll coordinate with them too on anything like that. Yeah.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, and as this is a resolution, we can call it immediately for a vote, which is what I will do. All those in favor of 22-R-72, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution passes 8-0. Moving on to reports from staff. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job tonight, staff. I appreciate the work that you all do. Anna, it's good to see you. The project. I'm looking forward to the J.R. Martin Park project. I've told Jared many times, I said, I don't know if I'll ever use the lazy river. I might kick a soccer ball in the new recreation park, but I cannot wait to see J.R. Martin Park and what that's going to do for the community. Just a bit of clarification on the smoke testing as to why. We mentioned this in the budget hearing that they were going to be doing this work. Even though it's a budgeted item, technically it was over $70,000. Even though it's budgeted, we wanted to go ahead and just put it as a resolution just so that you're aware that we can approve the expenditure. So the staff has been working on this. We just kind of pulled was actually supposed to start Monday. We're like, you know what? Let's just from covering ourselves in the budget to do it the right way, justify it and show it. Why it was not sealed bid is because this is the contractor that we've been working with from the very beginning. Just to clarify that, I told Karen, I said it'd be better if you had that on the record. Just because our spending limit is $70,000, they're wanting to spend $90,000. Even though it's budgeted, I appreciate doing the right thing and presenting that. Jared, great job on the budget and explaining all of that extremely fast tonight. I'm not really sure how you kept up with it all that fast, but I do appreciate the work that's gone into this budget. With that being said, I would anticipate between now and the second read, you will see a slight variation because what I asked the staff to do in the budget, I mentioned it in the budget hearing, we're always going to stay on the conservative side first, which means no new positions, cut positions, take out things, positions that were vacant like last year. So the PIO position is not actually included in this budget. So basically what we did is we stripped it down to like, what do we have right now? And then we add positions back in based upon what our revenue or our expenses look like they're coming in. So I'll ask staff between now and next week to evaluate that again, just to consider what positions we're bringing back into the budget. So when you look at a fund balance and say, wow, we got 900,000, what I'd like to say is we got there because we cut a lot of stuff out. We did cut a lot of things out of there, but when it's personnel and positions that we maybe didn't rehire in the year, a lot of times what we'll do in the budget is we'll slow down spending just to say, because the economy's changing, things look different. Do we really want to fill a position right now or evaluate it? So we're going to evaluate the PIO positions, the planning department positions, communication positions, all those things. So I will be bringing back something after we meet with staff. So you may see a slight variation, but it will be clearly identified in an amendment, just because I wanted to give time to get to this point in the budget. So just one little qualifier before we approve the second read. On December 6th, I'll be presenting at the chamber. I do this each year. Last year I did it in November. Macy was nice enough this year to let me switch from November to December, because last year I presented to the chamber before I ever presented to the council, which will be the same situation again this year. But it's going to be a little bit more information on the December 8th meeting, where I'm going to talk about, at the chamber I'll be talking at December 6th, so I can encourage everyone to go to that event, because you'll be seeing the projects that we're working on. The December 8th meeting is kind of an all supervisors meeting of the staff, so it's like all city or all supervisors of the city. But we'll also be talking about the direction of the city, projects that we see that are going on, and what we can anticipate as the priorities moving forward. We'll also be asking for your thoughts on what the priorities which you see of the community are as well. I'm also going to outline, like I just previously mentioned, what I see that we need to focus on. Financial sustainability is going to continue to always be one of them. And so looking forward to having that discussion. We will not take up a lot of time during that day, but we're going to talk about the projects that we got working on, the ones that are coming, and kind of give you an insight as to what's going on that we get to work on every single day, but we don't necessarily bring up at this podium every single night. If you look, or every other Tuesday night, if you look at our website and to the project tracker, you'll see 15 or 16 different projects that are ongoing. We probably got 15 or 16 projects that are not even on the project tracker. And so I'm looking forward to talking to the chamber. I always love doing that. We're talking to a lot of different groups right now, but I'm looking forward to talking about the September or December 8th meeting, because I want to talk about, while things are good, and I hear a lot of positive things everywhere we go. You go out through municipal league, go out throughout the state, people are talking about the city. What I want to talk about is where we can get better, and where we're going to continue to put our focus towards leadership, growing our succession plans, how to sustain it, talking about what's in the best interest long-term of the community. This is just a good conversation to just kind of launch us into 2023. There's anything wrong. I'm just a fundamentals person. I think people get so caught up in the results and the outcome, they forget that it's just about doing the little things right. And sometimes we got to work on the little things. So that's what we're going to be talking about, but also talking about the big things. So if you get a chance, join us on December 6th, or be at the chamber December 6th. It'll be a good time. And then December 8th, we'll have a work session during the day. Not keep you the whole day, but probably 2 or 3 hours. Had a great conversation with Governor Parson last week. He was in town. We tried to get him to do a groundbreaking on the first ARPA project. He chose, there was another event that we got invited to, so he gave us some FaceTime. We were able to thank him for the funding for the $25 million that we received. He is sure to know that we'll be back in Jefferson City in coming months to continue to work on additional funding. But he's very much he was very complimentary of the work that's going on in Republic. He's a big fan of the work going on in Republic, and he did encourage us to continue to request funding through the appropriate channels and the programs that the state has got going on. I just appreciate the fact that our effort has drawn the attention at a state level, and looking forward to seeing what we can do in this next session to minimize the impact to our residents, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Happy Veterans Day. I will say this also, just as a reminder, thank you to our veterans. This Saturday is the Ruck and Run, and I always get this wrong. It's Meadowview Baptist Church. Pastor Matthews, it's at his, I think that starts at 7 in the morning, but they have a fire pit. It's supposed to be nice and chilly, but the Ruck and Run is a great event that has only grown each year in our community to celebrate veterans. I love what they talk about. It's not a holiday sale. It's not a mattress sale. It's not a sofa sale. It's a day to celebrate our veterans, which when you think about it on election day, the right that we have to vote. So just thank you to all the veterans that have served our country. Smoke testing we've already talked to. Congrats to the Republic football team for beating Webb City for the first time in 24 years. And so that's a huge one. I know them kids have fought hard. They also beat Nixa, which is also kind of a big year for them. Sorry, Madam Counselor. But it's huge for our kids. And thank you all for that got out to vote today. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Reports from council. Wow, quiet group tonight. All right. Well, I'm not going to fight against that. I'll be quiet. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And with that, we do have executive session, so no further action other than announcing adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled as the last matter on the agenda, unless otherwise stated on the agenda or is allowed per RSMO 610.02. Tonight we will be dealing with 610.021.2, real estate acquisition, closed session, closed vote, closed record. Entertain a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerlich.
Aye.
Councilmember Prohl. Excuse me. Councilmember Self.
Aye.
Councilmember Updike.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
We are adjourned, and as a personal favor,